All right. Hello. I have Lacie
Hi.
here. Lacie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a full-time visual artist and comedic performer. I own and operate a little art studio in Dunnville, Ontario called Creative Barracks, where we offer a variety of different creative forms of art for people of all ages and abilities.
Right. And can you tell me a little bit about what led you to open up the studio?
So I had been an employee with a variety of different service providers, whether it was food service or educational programming for children. And I always found something that I enjoyed about my jobs. Um, but I always had something in the back of my mind in terms of how I would like to do things or how the things that I'm learning in my workplace in Niagara, for example, could really benefit people in my hometown of Dunnville. So after 3 years of working in Niagara at an after school program setting, I decided that I would branch out and start offering programming here in Dunnville, which eventually led to me opening an actual studio of my own.
Amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about the overarching vision that you have for the studio? Um,
So I kind of stick with the line "art is for everyone." I use the word art to sort of capture the idea of creativity itself. So that involves music, performance, writing, as well as visual art and even cooking.
Amazing. And I'm going to go off the cuff a little bit here. Um, Can you tell me a little bit about the role that art plays in, especially a community like Dunnville?
Sure. I think uh, in a small community, and I'm sure people are familiar with a rural community, not just Dunnville, but um, people tend to be very similar and like-minded, uh, and there's nothing wrong with that. But especially with children, seeing that everyone is very alike, it makes them difficult. It makes it difficult to accept yourself if you think you're a little different. So quite often, I just use art as a way for children to express themselves. Um, I have a lot of students that come in for the first time, and they almost warn me, like, just so you know, I'm a little weird. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And I always tell them, well, welcome home, because I'm a weirdo. And the weirder you are, the better. And we're going to have a lot of fun. So art is a great way to teach people self-acceptance.
Amazing. I love that. Um, Sorry, I'm just thinking about what I want to ask next because that's great. Um, so as somebody that kind of facilitates that environment for both children and youth and adults, can you tell me a little bit about some of your habits and some of the, what your day to day looks like in terms of being creative, taking care of yourself, and things like that?
So I would say that managing a studio and managing my own creativity and my own well-being is definitely a daily challenge. I've gotten into the habit over the last 3 years of running the studio. I try to find balance with my schedule. Um, Most of the time, my evenings from about 3 o'clock on are booked with classes, and often my weekend afternoons are usually booked with classes. But that leaves my mornings and my afternoons. Um, so I try to at least start the day off with a good meal, and get spend that time in the morning to get organized and then plan things out. So some afternoons I have adult workshops or work programs, but that's okay because that's not an everyday thing. And the days that I have freedom, those are my down days, whether I read a book or work on cooking or plan some other creative activities. Um, I take the time when it's there. I'm
Mhm.
also a bit of a night owl. So I find that teaching classes in the evenings leaves me really energized in the evening. So I kind of ride that energy until it's time to go to bed.
Gotcha. I'm a night owl too. Um, and is there any, like, are there any habits that you feel are important that you would like to incorporate more, or do you feel like you got it kind of covered?
I think I would like to be more organized, sort of financial paperwork end of things.
Mhm.
Um, I've n- I very much started this business without a lot of experience from a business perspective. I've operated studios before, I've operated restaurants before, but there was always a team of people supporting my activity. So I've sort of built the operations of the studio from the ground up, not necessarily knowing what I'm doing. So it's been a lot of sort of learning and adjusting. And this is usually that time of the year during tax time where I can go, okay, you made this giant headache for yourself because you didn't do what you could have done. And it just helps me reassess things that I could do differently in the future.
Gotcha. Um, I I feel the same way in terms of like the financial picture. That's not my. We've talked about this before. That's not my necessarily forte, and so the financial side of things is always a little bit more of a challenge for me. Um, I had a question that I was thinking of, and I have lost it. Um,
Mm.
so in terms of like the like when you're managing a business like that and you're coming in contact with so many different people, um, is there anything that you would identify as like the five main things that you would focus on in the next year that you think would help you move forward?
I think, especially this break that we're going through right now,
Hmm.
I think if I'm taking anything away from it, the number one would definitely be that if I make time for myself um, and finding that calm translates throughout the entire business, whether it's my approach to handling paperwork or programming, or just interacting with people in the workshops. Um, I tend to have a lot more compassion for children when it comes to teaching because everything's new. And I really appreciate their creative perspective because they're always looking outside of the box.
Hmm.
Um, but that can be frustrating when you flip flop things to teaching with adults because adults have very restrictive ideas and borders, and they're always in the box, looking at the box, trying to define the box. Um, and that can be really difficult. And I find if I come at things with a little bit of humor and look at things from they're learning something completely different too. It keeps things calm. So just trying to bring calm into the workplace, or at least my business approach, would definitely be one. Um, the last year has really taught me um, that there's strength in community. So I mean, we've always had that idea that this is a community space and it's meant for the community. Um, but finding like-minded people, even like yourself, makes the space more dynamic and it offers more to the community. And it relieves me a little bit because I don't have to do everything all the time. And I think that's a really good lesson as a business owner of any kind because quite often the default is, well, it's my business, I have to do it. So just leaning in on people and asking for help. Um, oh, some other things I want to do. It's a good question. I mean, that finding of balance can also be a challenge,
Hmm.
um, because there are so many things that I want to do. I also have to eat and sleep and rest, um, and those are things. So I need to find a way um, to schedule things more appropriately, so that when the downtime is there, I can take advantage of it. But when it's time to teach or to interact with the students that are in the space, um, I'm more appreciative of it because I've had the time to myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the other thing for me would be just marketing, trying to, I mean, you've been to the space, so
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of um, street marketing on our physical place, our location. So that's something I'd really like to sort of double down on and expand and make it so that there is no doubt in your mind that this is the art studio when you walk by.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I'm hearing a lot of like, self-care, taking care of yourself, maintaining that idea of balance and calm, and then
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
I think that's for people that run businesses, I think that's a huge uh, part of it is developing the marketing strategy. And I know that's something I'm spending a lot of time on right now.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice that you would give to somebody kind of branching into business ownership, managing a business, offering programming for kids? Anything that you would say?
So I think the biggest thing that really fueled what I do now in the early months even was asking people what they want. I mean, I literally uh, share on my social media my sort of everyday stuff. Um, and 5 years ago, I mean, I was working full time for another studio. I was constantly taking pictures of the things that I was doing. And people started responding saying, could you do that here? I would love for that to happen. Could you do a birthday party? What if you did this? So listening to what people want. Obviously, if you have a network of people that you can communicate with, that's great. But at least start with identifying your market and then asking them, whether it's family and friends, or I mean, now we have social media, so you can ask just about anyone, anything. Um, so those sort of community groups or buy and sell groups on Facebook are really helpful in terms of learning what services are needed.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. I think that I was just reading about that yesterday, actually, that a lot of us come into this, um, providing programming for kids, and we have an idea of what we think needs to be out there, but asking, well, what do you want? What do you need? What is, what will be beneficial for you? That's such a great question to ask. So I think that was all that I had in terms of like questions. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, or for anybody that's listening?
I guess the one thing is I, if you're looking to offer programming for children, that's great. You can have the programming for children, but I would sort of suggest not isolating children from other people. Um, Perhaps it doesn't work across every opportunity, but some of the best interactions and the best moments we've had in the studio are where we've had very diverse groups of people in the studio. So one example, about this time last year, I put a call out into our local buy and sell community groups on Facebook and said, if there was one night a week where we open the studio up to completely free programming for whoever wants to come, what would you like to do? So the response was knitting and crocheting. So Thursday nights, we have a 2-hour period where anyone can come in. The community has actually donated a pile of knitting needles, crochet hooks, and yarn. But what's happened organically is we have the very knowledgeable and experienced knitters and crocheters. They're usually older, and they're coming because they just want to be social. But they're bringing their grandchildren because here's an opportunity to teach the grandkids, and here's a fun, exciting space to be in, and there might be other people. And what's happened is this cross-generational sharing of knowledge, and I'm seeing kids be inspired by what the adults are making, and then trying to make their own things. But I'm also sort of seeing the kids say, it would be really cool if you could make an elephant doll. And then the adults are going, oh, well, that's a really fun challenge. Can I make an elephant doll?
Right.
So trying to find those opportunities for either different generations or different cultures or different just people to interact with each other, because that's when some really beautiful magic happens.
That's really, I working within like a daycare setting often, I've never considered that, but that's such a great and valid suggestion. Absolutely. Because there is, I always say that like that's a sign of a healthy community when you see the different ages coming together, right? So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and
Yeah, thank
for
you.
chatting with me. And if anybody who is listening to this wants to check out Lacie's work, Lace, what's your website?
Barracks by the Grand, BARRACKSBYTHEGRAND.ca.
Awesome. And you have Instagram, Facebook, all the social media handles. And
Yeah, if you just search Creative Barracks on Facebook, you'll find us. If you search Barracks by the Grand on Instagram, you'll find us.
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah.